Welcome back to the Craic, everyone. I am Petesy Carroll. Crackheads, how have you been? It's another beautiful Friday. We have a lot to talk about today. I mean, as you can see on our beautiful thumbnail, we are going to be talking about Khamzat Chimaev today, and the fact that he is once again favorite, probably not a surprise to a lot of people, against DDP when they will eventually fight, of course. We have news to talk about regarding the PFL Patchy Mix. It's another tricky news story for the PFL. Let's be honest. We know that the boys in the back attacked the Ilia v Islam situation yesterday, but we will have a little reprieve to that, of course, today. And of course, there's a bit of a fight this weekend. It is, of course, Morales in that main event. Chuck Mindenhall has talked to him. Chuck Mindenhall is on the show, I might add, as is Ben Fowlkes, the Uncrowned Dream Team. So we have a lot to unpack today. I've had a bit of an ordeal today, and I'll get into that as well. I'm kind of going to use the lads to be like my therapists of sorts, because it's been a wild day in Dublin for Petesy Carroll. Very stressful. Before I bring the lads in, let's hear from my wonderful friends over at Averon. Oh, Averon, I love you so much. Your workout routine shouldn't feel like a grind. That's why Averon makes exercise more fun and easier to stick to using gamification. Yep, you can play actual video games while you work out. Powered by their award-winning Averon World software and paired with industry-leading hardware, Averon's rower, bike, and treadmill deliver some of the most fun and effective workouts ever. Jump into a session, and before you know it, you're locked in, competing head-to-head, racing against the clock, or chasing your personal best. Averon's got everything from games and challenges to virtual rides, on-demand classes, and the most streaming options out there. Sweat it out, get competitive, and look forward to your next cardio day. And the Averon Victory Treadmill just launched. It's the world's first gamified treadmill. And you can get back into fitness for the new year with introductory pricing. Plus, head over to averonactive.com/uncrowned and get an extra $50. That's right, $50 off. Go to averonactive.com/uncrowned to end boring workouts. There it is, the wonderful people over at Averon. What a wonderful group of people. Speaking of wonderful people, let's bring in the lads. Ben Fowlkes, Chuck Mindenhall, my beautiful friends. There you are. Oh, like a warm hug just seeing those beautiful faces.
How you doing, man? Let it out. What's wrong with you?
It's always something with this guy.
It's always something, man. He was talking right before you got on, Ben. I don't know how much you heard of this. He was reciting a dream that he'd had. He was reading a journal. I almost want you to read it. Oh my God. It was.
Should we start the show with one of my dreams?
It's worth it. Trust me. Let's hear it.
This is written last year, March 2024.
You're going into the archives of your dream journal?
Yeah, but wait, now set up the context now. Why did you have this dream?
Well, listen, I don't want to get too much into the context, but during this period, I was having very, very, I don't know how to say it, like visceral dreams. Like they felt really alive. And there was a reason for that, which I won't get into. But this is what this dream was. I'm just making sure this is actually safe to say. All right, sorry. I live in a really fancy house in the dream. Tiger Woods is the first person I see every morning when I get into my car. It's a BMW Jeep to go to work. I go to Saudi Arabia to cover the Mike Tyson v Bruce Springsteen fight. For some reason, I'm watching it on a bus with Chuck. Mark Goddard is commentating for some reason. I go out for a smoke and somehow get caught rolling a joint. I got stuck outside with 3 Saudi police and I missed the entire fight. The next entry is Ireland are at war with England again.
Wow.
I let off a load of tear gas and get shot 26 times. They let me die. By the time I get to hospital, they take my top off and I look in the mirror and I've got holes all over my body. And welcome to the Craic, everyone. I am Petesy Carroll and those are my dreams from March.
I've had that dream, man. I've had that dream. That's good stuff, man.
What you think, Ben? You like
concerned. I'm frankly, I'm very concerned for you and especially, I don't know how you're going to be like, I'm going to start this show by reading my dream journal from a year ago when I was having really strange dreams and there was a reason for it. And I won't get into that. You better get into it. You better explain what.
Listen,
there are clues within the dream, I think.
There's some stuff.
Yeah.
One thing that was really strange is back at a period of time when I was covering a whole lot of UFC events on the road and was on the road at least, twice a month covering events, but also was doing a whole lot of just jujitsu in my own life for fun, recreationally down at the gym. And so a recurring dream I would have, the closest I've ever come to having a recurring dream is that I would be covering a UFC event and they would come to me like Dave Scholler or somebody would come to me. That's how long ago this dream was. He would come to me and be like, "Hey, can you do us a favor?
Oh, Jesus.
One of the guys is out. We need," and it would always be somebody. The only person I really remember is they were like, "Could you step in and fight Cole Miller for us?" Like, so it was somebody where, at least in my dream mind, it was believable. Where I was like, "Cole Miller, he's not. It's not like they're asking me to fight John Jones or anything or Habib. Like Cole Miller." Twerp. I feel like maybe I could take him. He's a jujitsu guy. I'm a jujitsu guy. And they're like, he's willing to he spot you the weight and everything. We got some shorts backstage. And in the dream, it makes sense. I go back there. I start warming up. I'm like, all right, let's do our best out here. I'm helping out. And then right before I would walk out, I would be like, wait a minute. This is insane. I'm going to get killed on TV. And then the dream was over.
That is funny, man.
Oh,
Cole Miller.
Cole Miller.
What a guy.
No disrespect, Cole Miller. If
No.
you're watching, I know Cole Miller watches the Craic every week. No disrespect. It was just the most believable person my dream brain could come up with.
Maybe we could do like a live stream of you v Cole Miller in just the no-gi kind of match, just to bring this some closure to the whole conversation and the reoccurring dream. Listen, today, right, we're going to get to MMA chat now in a second, but I feel like I need to explain here.
No, you should.
Today I'm in Dublin City Centre. I'm on the way home with my friend driving the car. We come to a massive junction in Dublin. And next of all, this warning flashes on the screen on my car. Malfunction, temperature exceeding something or other, right? So I'm freaking the fuck out immediately. I'm trying to go through the junction, but the car won't go beyond 10 kilometers an hour. There's a lot of cars trying to get around me, beeping me, all this stuff. I ring my dad. I'm like, "Dad, there's this warning. It's saying like there's a temperature malfunction on my car." And he was like, "Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. I'm going to ring Darren, who was our mechanic." He's like, "Oh, God, this is good. This is good." And I was like, "What do you mean? Could this blow up?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think so. I think so. Let me call Dara." And I'm just in the car then. Nowhere to park. There is no parking spots. This is like a main road in Dublin. And I'm just like, right, I just got to keep going. So I'm like 10 kilometers just tipping along in Dublin. Get to a place eventually. Ring my mechanic. He's like, "Okay, this is terrible. Your car is completely overheated. The fans are gone in the engine." And I was like, "What should I do?" And he's like, "Just try and tip home slowly." And I'm like, "What?" So all the way home, my temperature gauge is going, whoa, just out of nowhere, just because it's actually a heat wave here at the moment. Terrifying. I got the car where it needs to go, thank God. But quite an ordeal, boys. I can't tell you the levels of stress I've felt today. This is like a warm hug I'm having here.
Yeah, you're coming in hotter than that car, man. This is good. This is good. I like when you're a little off center.
You know what I mean? The car is old, so I don't really give a shit. But I mean, stressful.
I feel like just try to drive home slowly is the advice I could have given you if you wanted to call me. I'd have been like, just see if you can make it.
He's like, don't go uphill, and the whole way home are like this.
Yeah. If you're sick, you drink some 7-Up, right? That's what you do. Like,
yeah,
basic stuff.
Yeah. Well, listen, we better talk about some MMA. That's why we're here. Khamzat Chimaev, lads, DDP. As you can see in the thumbnail, the question we're asking our beautiful crackheads today is, are we sleeping on DDP? Of course, Khamzat Chimaev, an absolute savage. Ever since he popped up in the UFC in 2020, I think he's been the favorite in every single fight he's had. It's been 3 years since he fought in the US. And of course, DDP has been on an absolute tear since then. I think he's won many fights that a lot of people did not expect him to. He's coming into this fight with a lot of hype behind him this time. He keeps making people cry at press conferences. I don't think that's going to happen with Khamzat, funnily enough. But lads, just to open this one up, Chuck, it's not a surprise that this guy is the favorite, but I mean, is it a bit of disrespect to DDP at this stage, given how much he has shown us during his UFC tenure?
Especially after the last fight. Like, I remember we had this discussion. We were like, you know what, man, I'm not sleeping on this guy anymore. Like, he's legit. Shutting down Strickland. It's funny because you were talking about Khamzat being a favorite. I think if you look at Du Plessis, like, except for that last fight, he's been an underdog for Izzy fight, for the Whitaker fight, and the first Strickland fight. So he's kind of been on the opposite side of this. So maybe if you're talking about, like, you know, a sports book, sense and kind of what the as a weather vane for like what the public sees or whatever, maybe it does make some sense this way. But what is the line on this? Because I think the last I saw it, it was something like 2-1 favorite for Khamzat, which seems to me a little high.
Yeah, that's
maybe
what I'm saying as well.
Yeah, maybe we're falling. Maybe we're falling for, and I mean we can get into this a little bit, but maybe we're falling for that last fight that Khamzat had with Whitaker, and we're like, okay, the beast or this monstrosity that came in like that started is back, and that's what we're doing, right? But otherwise, I feel like that line's a little disrespectful.
What say you, folks?
My first thought when I saw that line was, we're doing it again. We're doing it to this guy again. We do it every time where DDP will win a fight, look awkward the whole time, but also unquestionably win. We'll come out of it and we'll be like, well, imagine that. He won. He's going to lose the next one, though. And then he'll go out there in the next one. He'll go out there, win, look awkward, still get it done. And we'll be like, well, won another one. He's going to lose the next one, though. We've been doing it.
That's true.
Basically, ever since this guy came in the UFC, we will not learn our lesson. And I get it because I look at this stylistically and I go, all right, if there's a guy who could do some different stuff to DDP, who could get in there and just sort of like maybe physically overpower and bully him a little bit, get him into some different zones of the fight, maybe it's Khamzat. But then I catch myself and I'm like, God damn, I'm doing it again. We refuse to believe in this guy every single time he goes out there. Like on paper, if you just showed somebody this and you're like, here's the UFC middleweight champ, everybody kind of thinks he sucks. And they would look at his record and be like, how? He's beating everybody. He's winning all these fights. He's beating all these like past middleweight champions. How do people keep doubting this guy? And we'd be like, if you saw him fight, maybe you'd understand. And it's wild. Like I kind of think a similar thing to what I thought when Khamzat fought Robert Whitaker was, if it goes more than one round, Khamzat might be in trouble. And it didn't. And so he wasn't. But I kind of am inclined to think the same thing here with this matchup. I feel one way or another, by the time we get 2.5 minutes into the first round, we're going to know some things. We're going to know some things about how this is going to go.
Yeah, it's a really, really exciting fight. It's just, I think, right, the reason why I want to talk about the fact that it's been a long time since it's been the US, obviously, 30 years, and I think it was the Gilbert Burns fight in Vegas. And I think there's some significance to this, only because I've been to Abu Dhabi when Khabib fought there. And obviously we know that these governments, they're paying the UFC to come there, right? Like they want Khabib, they wanted Khabib in Abu Dhabi, they want Islam in Abu Dhabi. Saudis want Khamzat, a massive figure in for Muslim people, a massive, massive deal, understandably. But what I found when I was covering 242 was, it was the first time that it didn't feel like the UFC were in control. It felt like Khabib was. And I can remember there was a situation after the weigh-ins where he was going to do another press conference. And I was with Casey Lloyd and Esther Lee, we worked for MMA Fighting at the time. And suddenly Khabib was like, no, I'm not doing it. And then like the UFC were just like, oh, he's not doing it. And so then all the media are kind of like, hang on a fucking second. Like we came here to cover a Khabib fight. We need to have the Khabib moment. Next of all, they've changed the location of the press conference because Khabib wanted it in a certain place. He wanted to do it at a certain time. He got up for 10 minutes. He said, I'm only doing 10 minutes. Got up to do it. And that's what happened. But basically, the place was in the palm of his hand the whole week. It felt like the whole thing was geared around him. I haven't been to Saudi Arabia for a fight, but I know for a fact that Khamzat has been one of the big guys on all of these cards that he's had away from the US. He's one of the massive draws. He's a superstar. He is getting the royal treatment out there. And, he's a huge deal. Of course he has. But I wonder what that means when he comes back to the US, Chuck. And technically, like, he is not the king here. DDP is. I know he's a South African guy, but he is the king of the UFC's middleweight division. He is fighting for his title. Do you think that like is a different kind of situation for the guy to be in? Does that change the dynamic in the lead up to a fight week when you're like, yes, you're in the main event. Everybody's excited to see you. There's been a massive countdown for this guy to fight for a title, but you're not quite the guy with the crown right now.
I mean, and there's weird evidence of this, of, when Khamzat was here, wasn't with the whole Nate Diaz thing, right? With the Nate Diaz, and then he had to go up and wait, and he fought Holland, and it was like a whole ordeal. It could have some strength. Like, he's used to a certain thing. And honestly, this is one of the big criticisms as to why he couldn't get a title shot to begin with, is because we were like, well, is he going to be eligible to fight in the United States? Because if he's a champion, if they're going to give him that shot, you can't just hold everything in the Middle East. He's going to have to come over at some point and fight on U.S. soil. They've solved that. Now, what does that look like? I don't know. And there's always a little bit. There's always a little bit of a roulette feel to this when they book Khamzat in anything, right? Because you're like, weird things have happened. He's had, illnesses, and there's been things that have kind of gone on where you're like, you got to make sure he's going to make it there. So I feel like we can't just take it for granted, that he's going to be there. But you just hope he is. But I think that the big thing is that he's able to come to the United States. For the longest time, we would speculate and say like, well, he's got a visa problem. He can't get over to the United States. At least we've solved that problem. And, it's kind of open for him to do this. What that means, I don't know. You're mentioning like Khabib. I also remember, and they did plenty of publicity when Khabib was fighting Conor McGregor. Obviously, man, it got so dark through that whole period. But in terms of one-on-one interviews, I remember we were trying to set that up, and they were like they shut everybody down. Very similar to what you're talking about. There was supposed to be a couple of those set up. They shut everybody down, except for your boy Ariel, Helwani, and me. We're the only two guys who got him that time. But it was like but it was a very weird kind of tense situation. I don't think it's quite like that. Like, I feel like they're different, but I know what you're saying. There's a different kind of treatment that happens, and you're like, what does that mean for Khamzat over here? I guess we wait and see.
What do you think, Ben?
It is interesting, and a view to what this sport is like when we talk about, oh, this guy hasn't fought in the U.S. for a while. Why not? He had some visa problems.
We actually don't know, right? Like, we're still up in the air. Like, apparently, we're kind of on that wave, right?
It's better than share a bullet where we're like, well, the dude is clearly...
Yeah. Well, I mean, is it better? Because especially like with Khamzat, it's like, yeah, we think it's mostly owing to his close personal relationship with a dictator who likes to sometimes threaten genocide.
Yeah.
I should be laughing. I'm sorry.
It's weird,
No,
and it's also
true, though.
It's weird how it's not that weird to us. We're like, yeah, that makes sense. MMA, it's a wild and diverse world. You have all kinds of people in this kind of world, and then, lo and behold, we get his visa problems fixed when a friend of the UFC CEOs becomes president of the United States, and suddenly it's not an issue anymore. We can have Khamzat come over here and fight. It did seem, though, that was going to be a big thing that stood in the way of the UFC seriously considering him as a champion, because you can't have a champion that can only get in a few places to fight. That, like Robert Whitaker's joke about him, where he was like, Khamzat is always tweeting at me like, I'll see you soon, and I'm going, where?
I know. Well, that is
a fight anywhere. And so if you have that cleared up, that does remove like one of the hurdles. But Chuck raises a good point that the UFC must be thinking it. I know they think like, hey, this is a good fight to book. It would be a really impressive next step for DDP to take. I mean, imagine if DDP had a year where he was just like, I basically beat everybody there is to beat at middleweight,
True.
beat Khamzat, beat Sean Strickland, beat Israel Adesanya. Like, at that point, we might have to step back and be like, oh crap, is DDP the best middleweight champion since Anderson Silva? We're not psychologically ready for that yet. We are not ready to have that conversation. No. But that's kind of
a pound for pound chat as well, right? Like, if he is doing this kind of stuff,
it's crazy. It's crazy to think that could realistically happen, because Khamzat has been looming in our minds for a while as like a scary figure whose day is coming at middleweight. But at the same time, the UFC, when they book this fight, they're like, this is the one that makes sense. This is the logical next step. We need to have a backup option, though, if we are depending on Khamzat to come in there and actually show up and deliver, because you never know what's going to happen with that guy.
Yeah, it does feel like that. It feels like it's very like, well, we'll see if it all goes down as they think it will. But for the sake of that division, and also just for fans, because we keep getting these big fights kind of dangled in front of us and we don't get it. I actually feel like this is right up there. It's not quite the Ilia Islam type thing, but like, we've been trying so hard and for the longest time speculating and just kind of thrusting Chimaev into the title fight. We've been saying this forever. It feels like he's been on this move for the last 4 or 5 years, right? Like, it just feels like it's been coming. So we're finally here. It would suck to not get it, right? It would be like one of those things like, man, we cannot get any of the things we want this year, even though they're right there in front of you. So You know, we'll pray to what was Ben always had like the Zions or whatever gods.
The MMA gods.
Yes, the MMA gods. Yeah.
Strong up there upon Mount Zions.
Yes,
and ready to hit you in the
them.
teeth with a thunderbolt if they hear you talking about how you're going to be a 3-division champion or whatever before you've ever won one belt. I hate that. Also, when you show those rankings, poor Nasruddin Imavov. You know,
I know.
Sitting up there at number one.
It's like every division's got a guy like that, you know, that we just kind of like, push that dude aside, you know.
He's in the Bilal situation, the Leon situation. Yeah. It's Arman
Sarukian, right? Like there's a bunch of dudes like that just are like, nah.
Guess I'm fighting him. That's brilliant. Oh no, Jordan, fantastic. There's also a situation you can't look past when you look at Khamzat's record. Look, Usman's a big welterweight, no doubt about it. Kevin Holland, he's not very big. Gilbert Burns was a lightweight, moved up to welterweight. Robert Whittaker wasn't getting on very well at welterweight, moved up to middleweight, was considered a small middleweight. Guess what Dricus du Plessis is not? Small in any way, shape, or fucking form. He is a monster. He's like, I think I've compared him to fighting a wardrobe. You know what I mean? He's just coming at you like it's you can't even get your arms around the guy. He's so big. I think that's a serious issue when you're a grappler. When you're a guy like shooting double legs, obviously he is excellent. Khamzat is unbelievable wrestler. He is so aggressive. His explosion into his shots is you blink and you miss it. What he did against Whittaker is perfect evidence of that. But Chuck, man, the size of DDP is going to be an issue here. It has to be, right? And am I crazy thinking that he hasn't fought anyone on that same scale in terms of size?
No, you're right, 100%. And I think he said like he walks around something like 230. He's huge. He's a big dude. But you know what's really crazy about him is, like, I can remember when Strickland, both times, we were like, is he going to mix in some wrestling? You know, is he going to mix in some wrestling? He's going to try to wrestle, and he didn't. I don't think he ever really shot in. You know, and I know that Izzy did once, but it was more like in a desperation moment. Nobody's really doing that. I think Brunson might have been one of the dudes who took down DDP for like just a minute or something. Do you remember that? Like I only kind of remember a little bit of how that went down, but not a lot of guys are doing it where in this fight that's going to happen. I guess that's one of the big mysteries of this fight. What happens when somebody is just trying to sell out to take you down? And what do you look like when you're on your back? Are you able to, are you a different version of yourself? We haven't seen enough of that, right? That's the one big mystery in this fight. So I don't think it's going to be easy to get him down. Like you're mentioning, man, he's a barge of a man. Like he's gonna be hard to take down. But if he does get that done, if Khamzat is able to get him to the ground, I feel like we're now gathering information that we haven't had before.
What you recommend?
Yeah, I think that also though the question is, what do you do once you get him to the ground? Because Khamzat does have good submissions, but I also feel like from what we've seen from him in some of these past fights, if he gets you to the ground, if you get back up, he's not necessarily the same kind of Khabib fighter that can just keep doing it to you all night long, who can just keep dragging you back down, making it tough for you to get up. He kind of needs to finish you early on, I think, because I think that's going to get a lot tougher to do against DDP. We've seen Khamzat fade late in those fights. At this point, DDP has a lot of experience in 5-round fights. And I don't know. I just don't see Khamzat being able to keep rinsing and repeating that strategy for 5 full rounds. I think that he probably needs to jump on DDP early, do the thing where he did against Robert Whittaker, where you just get the guy locked into a spin cycle where he keeps falling a little bit further and further behind, and then you pull off a submission. Because I think if you hear the words round 3 in this one, I think it starts to tilt toward DDP, regardless of what's happened up until that point.
That's the one good thing about Usman and Burns, right? Like the fights where guys were able to kind of put some tape together, because beforehand you're getting like a couple minutes of a first round, or in the Mershart thing, it's like you get 17 seconds of a fight. You're not seeing a lot of what he's able to do, but I do think that that's what you cling to if you're DDP. You probably try not to put yourself, although he is such a downhill kind of guy sometimes. It's like I always compare him to like a toddler going downhill. Like he just looks like he's out of control when he's winging the punches, but he's but I mean, as long as he kind of avoids that early and doesn't get himself caught, I mean, you're right, Ben. I feel like that's the other part of this. It's like, if anybody could be broke, and if there's a guy who can do the breaking, it's going to be DDP.
Yeah.
based on this, lads, I just want to ask you for your prediction now, and I'm sure we'll be talking close to the fight. I just want to compare how we feel now, many months out to basically the week of the fight. Given everything you said, Ben, I have a feeling I know which way you're going here. But who would you pick to win this fight?
At this point, I feel like I need to break my personal cycle of thinking that DDP is always going to lose the next one. It's honestly, I think that there's a good chance that we have kind of built up Khamzat as a boogeyman in our minds, and that this could be the kind of fight where if you can't get him out of there in the first round, we find out that we we got excited about the possibilities without necessarily seeing enough to really go on. Because that's one thing you can't really say about DDP at this point, is that we haven't seen enough of the guy. We've seen it. We've seen all kinds of facets of his game, and we've had a good long look at the guy. We still come away sort of unimpressed just because it doesn't look like we expect a champion fighter to look. It doesn't look as like clean and effortless. It doesn't look graceful. Let's just admit that, even when it's
It's
effective.
cumbersome. It's very cumbersome.
Yeah.
It's awkward. It's difficult to deal with, but it's also effective.
Yeah.
And people have struggled with it. And I also think that if DDP is able to make this a DDP fight, Khamzat is lost, because he has really succeeded in kind of just making it a wild, just very high paced and quick kind of affair every time he gets in there. And if he's not able to do that against DDP, I think he loses. And so I lean toward DDP here.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. It's crazy because it feels like he's going into a buzzsaw, and obviously you can see the odds are reflecting that. People are kind of looking at this, but there are levels when you get to this type of thing, and like you look at the resumes, who these guys have fought, and you kind of just their one alike opponent is Whitaker. But I don't know what you can actually get from that, because what Ben said earlier, if Whitaker survives, if that doesn't happen in the first round, I don't know how that fight looks. It's hard to really know. I just think that if he's able to get through whatever that onslaught is at the beginning, if he's able to get through that, I just see a scenario where the tides turn and we're starting to be like, oh, here we go. He can't do it. He can't keep up with him, So we'll see. It's a fascinating fight, man. And but I agree. I think if it's early, it's Chimaev. If it's late, it's DDP.
So who are you going with, Joe? Come on, get off the damn fence.
I'm leaning DDP. I think that he'll get. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think he is so massive, and so is Chimaev. Let's face it, man. He's also walking around as a big guy. I just think that for him to manhandle the way he has some of the other guys, I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that. I'm not sure he's going to be able to do the exact same thing he was to these smaller guys that he was doing it to.
That's a full house for DDP. How worried is DDP that suddenly everyone, like, he's imagine he's watching this show and he's like, hang on a second, they're suddenly fucking picking me?
Wait, are you picking him too?
Yeah, all three.
Okay.
Like, for all the same reasons, and just the sheer size of that wardrobe, and I just, man, I'd say that would worry him, honestly, because I think he's kind of used that as a chip on his shoulder, right? Like, it becomes like a driving force. Like, I'm going to show these motherfuckers. And they're like, no, we think you're going to win. Go, champ. He's like, whoa,
Yeah,
what the
but if
fuck?
there's one thing I've learned about fighters after about 20 years of doing this, it's that they can always find the chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
They can go in there
I know.
as like a 4-1 favorite, and they're like, I know you, nobody's giving me a chance. Everybody's against me. And you're just like, what do you mean? Like, the promoter made this fight for you to win, and they can still talk themselves into it. A lot of guys, they just need that. That seems to be part of the fighter mentality. And some guys will even tell you, especially once their careers are done, I looked for reasons to feel that way. I just sort of manufactured that feeling. It's important to them. The reality of the situation does not stop them from doing it.
You're talking about these fighters as if they're deluding themselves. I've never known a fighter to do that. So this sounds
Very
invented.
honest brokers, if anything.
Only the best ones, and they
Yeah.
delude themselves with the best of them. They really know how to do it, and you have to really
Yeah.
to stick around in this sport.
Yeah, I agree. There was positive news for the UFC. Patchy Mix has signed after a long kind of impasse, we'll call it, with PFL. I see it as another bad news story for PFL. There it is there on air. Jordan just stuck it up for his Professional Fighters League, and Patchy Mix have mutually agreed to not extend his contract. We both decided this is the best course of action for PFL and him. Patchy is a fantastic fighter and we wish him well. PFL is excited to crown our next 125-pound champion in the PFL World Tournament. Now, I said UFC signed him. That is what we assume will happen. I shouldn't say that is I don't even know if that's across the line yet. It's what we all think will happen. It would not shock anyone in this whole community to hear that news. He is a great fighter, Patchy Mix. He is one of the jewels in their crown. Don Davis had tweeted, I think it was last year, about how great he was, and he's the best 135 pounder in the world. He is now off their books. I really like what PFL are doing in Europe, and I've talked about it many times over here. The Doumbé fight in Paris, I thought it was absolutely tremendous. Well, what a moment to be there, to see that. Unbelievable, 20,000 people in that arena for a card that a lot of people who watch MMA every weekend probably wouldn't recognize a lot of the names that were on that card that night. It was tremendous. I saw it again in Belfast last weekend, 8,000 people in the SSC to see Paul Hughes have this amazing moment. The problem is that nobody could see it in America. And that's really what that was meant to be about, showing the world what Paul Hughes means to the people in Belfast, his hometown. They did not get to see that live. They obviously saw it in social media afterwards, but it is a very worrying time for PFL, I think. Like every time I get excited about it, something else happens. Like even like I am using the Paul Hughes fight as an example. Huge moment for him. A moment that kind of justifies him making this move, not going for the UFC, accepting their entry level contract, going with the PFL. This made sense. If you were there, you would have saw it and said, "Wow, look at him moving these people." And then you find out nobody could see it, and you're like, "Well, that's really really bad. That is not good for the fighter. That is not good for the PFL." I'm getting very very worried, lads. Can anyone ease my mind here, or do you with me in this growing sense of foreboding when it comes to apparently the co-leader, Ben?
I mean, point to me a positive sign. Point to me things that seem to be like headed in the right direction. Because you're already anybody who is really trying to compete with the UFC, not just be another MMA organization that exists. I think there's still space for those as long as you keep your expectations and your expenses realistic. But if you're trying to be out here and be like, hey, we're just as big as the UFC, we're just as good as them, give us equal attention. All the signs for the PFL are troubling. They seem to be in an outfit in decline. And especially when you see all these fighters who, at this point, it's more surprising when you see people who spoke up saying, give me a fight or let me go, and they opted for give them a fight. Like when you see Sergio Pettis and Rafael Stotts booked to fight each other, it does kind of feel like everybody else was like ringing the bell to get off the bus and the doors open for them, and they kept these guys. And you got to be like, well, okay, these guys probably assumed we were getting off the bus too. And wait, did we have to let everybody else go so just to free up the money to pay these guys their contracted rates to go in there and fight? Like, it's surprising when they actually managed to keep somebody at this point. Plus, when it, like you said with the Paul Hughes thing, it does feel at this point like when there are opportunities, they're finding some way to botch it. Like when you had, Dakota Dacheva, like here's somebody exactly what you needed, a homegrown talent who kind of comes up through the PFL. People know her, they're excited about her, and then the next thing they hear is she's mad at you and she's demanding to know why you haven't gotten her fight. You have the Paul Hughes thing where it's like, okay, you got something here. You got Hughes versus Usman. You can work with that. That'll be a good return match. But then it's like when you get Hughes his big moment in front of like a crowd where he feels like a genuine star, those of us in the US are going, wait a minute, we can't watch this? I guess let us know how it turns out, like those kind of opportunities when you've already got so much stacked against you trying to compete with the UFC, you can't afford those. And they just seem to keep happening. And so, no, there's very little that I see that's reason for optimism.
No, I'm not going to be able to give you any.
You're already in Don Davis's bad books, mate. You better watch what you say. You better watch it.
When what's really glaring is like, so we do the rankings, we do our rankings, and I have to, do these little blurbs for each person who appears in there. And then every time, and it's not a lot of PFL people, but there are a couple. And Larissa Pacheco is one of those type of people. And you're like, I honestly don't know. Like she could have fallen off the face of the earth at this point. This is a person who went in there and really did damage to Cyborg. I know she did not get the nod, but that was a big moment, I thought, for her. Even as big because it was more viewed, I think. It was more considered than when she beat Kayla Harrison. Yet, where is she? I mean, these people, they just kind of disappear. It's like a vortex with these people. And like they just, when you get Dakota, like this whole time with Dakota, I'm like, we named her the breakout fighter of the year. I still think that she's probably the most coveted fighter on their roster. If the UFC could just pluck one, I'm sure that would be her and be like, bring her over because that's big business. And you thought maybe they had something working behind the scenes that we just haven't heard about. But then when she finally comes public and she's like, I haven't talked to them. I mean, my agent has. You're just like, oh my God, nothing is happening over there. And then you start to truly feel the frustration. If she's not in communication and she's not got things happening for her, what are just the people who rung below her, the ones who are kind of making up the organization, all the names that are fighting regularly that we've learned and known over the years from PFL, Bellator. What are they doing? What are they thinking? And it just seems like the dissension is growing more than anything else. And I mean, we've been all of us have covered this long enough to know when these signs are showing up that it usually means it's very bad, you know? So I feel like that's where they're at.
But it makes it worse that they kind of dissolved Bellator. Why did they take Bellator? You know, like the Ariel asked that question, I think it was on Wednesday, and it's like I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Like, why did they even bother?
Yeah.
Like, all these guys are just leaving. There's a lot of clock. We've missed a lot of fights from these guys. They could have been competing in this time, and
I mean, look at what but when they did it. Remember, they were like, we were talking about like this is great for MMA if they're able to.
Well, only if it worked though.
Only if it worked. We were like potentially, and they're bringing in. They're signing Jake Paul. Like they were doing things like that. You were just like, okay, they're trying to hit things that the UFC wouldn't touch, but still have magnitude. And still kind of translate to people. I had to look this up. I was like, when's the last time Jake Paul even mentioned? I think it was July of last year that he even mentioned the PFL on any kind of social media or anything.
That was 2023, right? Like that was the start of 2023 when this first came
when
out,
they
right?
first were doing it. I mean, the optimism and also the promises of what was to come. Yeah. It just, I think that's what makes it that much worse. It's just, you had it planned for something. And I think fighters looked at it that way. They thought something else.
Yeah, it's like, it's going to be absolutely detrimental to this whole industry, to this sport. If and I don't think I'm not the first person that's talking about this. This is something that's been talked about for a very long time. Like it seems like this organization is hemorrhaging cash and they're trying to figure out how to cut expenses and things like that. And if they go away, like Ariel's talking about, maybe they find a space between being a feeder league and the UFC. Like they're like, I think he was calling it LFA plus or like for if you're European, Cage Warriors plus. But if this goes away, the amount of displaced fighters, like it's so funny that like the UFC have just been in court for so long about this monopsony idea. And like, this has gone away. It's signed off. Don't worry about it, guys. But it's being further underlined by the fact that these promotions cannot find success. I'm not trying to say it's the UFC's fault, but like this is not going well. And if they go away, it's going to have absolutely devastating implications on the industry, Ben.
Yeah, and the question that I had when they bought Bellator, and especially once we started to see how it would go, is what did you buy? Like what did you get for that purchase? And if it's just to remove the other would-be competitor to the UFC, I don't know if that's good enough. Because that now that we've got some time from it, but we thought at first what you're buying is the roster, right? You're giving yourself more people. Because one of the questions that we had was when PFL made some of these signings, like especially when you sign like Francis Ngannou and stuff, where you're like, that's a big signing. That's something you could do a lot with. It's going to cost you a lot of money up front, but you could really go somewhere with that. You could create an event that we really want to see, but you got to have somebody for him to fight.
And they were even saying $2 million. Remember, it was like worked into the situation, the contract. Like, we're going to give $2 million to whoever he fights.
Well, yeah, and that was Francis doing that. That was Francis, which, again, the next time Dana White tries to tell you that Francis Ngannou is a bad person, he's the only fighter I've ever heard of do that in MMA, is try to make their clause so that there's a minimum and a very good minimum for his opponent in the contracts, and also look at some of the other people that UFC does not think are bad people and still wants to do business with. So that
just
that
about
contrast,
everybody else.
yeah, it tells you everything. But it's like we've seen this before with other organizations who are trying to kind of really kick in the door and become a big competitor to the UFC. It's one thing to sign a big free agent, but you have to have people for that person to fight. And when the UFC carries such a big roster all the time and doesn't really let too many people hit free agency at all these days, then it creates a really difficult situation. You have a lot working against you. And that's why you can't afford to fumble any of these opportunities when you do have them.
Just because you brought it up there and the 2 million and Francis Ngannou, all this stuff, Do either of you guys expect Francis Ngannou to ever fight in the PFL again?
I'd be a little bit surprised.
Me too.
Just given his age and the money he's already banked, and
yeah,
I would think that probably what you're going to see next is a Francis Ngannou boxing match, and then I wouldn't be surprised if that's it.
I agree. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's also maybe this is it's glaring in a lot of ways, but it is also, you know, like you had another league that just tried, and in fact, what are we at, May? I mean, they were supposed to have their event like right now, the GFL, right? Like all these other people. Yeah. You realize sometimes, man, fighters
have had 3 events by now.
I know,
right?
But you realize what these fighters put up with if they're not in the UFC, man. Look at all of this. Like, look what they have to go through just to get fights, to get paid, and this has been an ongoing story, man. And I think that's what sucks is actually, you know, when you think about like the absorbing of Bellator, buying Bellator, at least Bellator, you know, they might have complaints. They might have a lot of complaints, but they were legit around for a long time. They had, you know, TV deals. They were paying their fighters. They had a belt system. They had their way of doing things. It was still a professional outfit. It's just, it has devolved so bad in what was supposed to be a combined co-leader, right? Like a big super league that they're making outside the UFC, and it has just not been that. And in fact, it just, you feel for the fighters, man. Like we do this all the time, but like I feel if I'm not a fighter in the UFC, you know, if I and I'm dealing with this, you can see why people are just like, this is not worth it. Like, what am I giving my life away for this?
You know, that's a point that I heard brought up when I was working on some of the stories about the frustration going on with the PFL back when they first absorbed some of those Bellator guys, and there are a lot of people speaking out and being like, why can't we get a fight, and why can't we even get anybody on the phone to tell us why we're not getting fights? And one of the things that I heard from a few people, managers and coaches and stuff, they'd say, you know, people talk about UFC and the fighter pay, and that is a real issue, especially when you look at the split between how much money is coming in and how much actually makes it to the fighters. Those are all real issues. But one thing you can say about the UFC is they give you what they say they're going to give you. That's true, honestly. Like, there are plenty of things you can criticize the UFC for as well, but you don't hear this kind of criticism. They tell you, you know, we're going to give you this many fights. They give them to you. They at least give you the opportunity to have those fights. Now, they also will hold you under contract for as long as they possibly can at times, but the people will tell you, like, you can count on them to make good on these contracts and to let you know what's going on. And when you see that comparison in other organizations where that's not happening, you just go like, all right, yeah, that is a tough way to try to make a living as a fighter when your athletic window is so small.
Yeah. Speaking of fights that we wanted to see made, Ilia Topuria is not fighting Islam Makhachev, boys. We saw the fight last week. Jack Della Maddalena, a fantastic win over Bilal Muhammad. Ilia now fighting Charles Oliveira. Islam is going to go up and fight JDM at some point. I guess, I know the lads talked about this in great deal yesterday. They talked about Islam's legacy as lightweight champion. Is he one of the greats? But the thing that I kind of keep coming back to here is, like, this, the fan base accepted this so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, there's another thing the UFC deserve credit for. They've trained the fan base so well that they tell them when to get annoyed at things, and that's not a lot. But right now, that happened, right? We had this amazing fight. We talked about it. We were laughing last week about how much we talked about it. It was the thumbnail for every single episode of this podcast, I'd say, since its inception. Ilia v. Islam. It is not happening. And I just can't believe how quickly everyone just moved on and was like, yay, Islam v. JDM, what a fight. Oh, great. We get an Ilia v. Charles. This is amazing. And I'm like, what? What happened there, Chuck? I mean, how is this happening?
I mean, God bless the boys in the back. I was listening on that a little bit, but they were talking themselves into this too. I could, you know,
I think Rick is 100% genuine. In fairness to him,
I believe that they are, but I mean, I'm like you. I thought this exact thing. I'm like, so we just are going to accept this and roll on, huh? Like, well, that's it. And I mean, I guess it's inevitable. That's what's happening. But this is clearly a consolation. This is not what we wanted. And the problem with it is we've been the same thing we were saying before. We've been around the game long enough to know if you don't strike something like this when the iron is hot, while it's right there, it often won't come around, and at least not in the same circumstances. You know, like if it happens too late. This was a brilliant setup, and I wanted to see it because if you imagine the walkouts, I remember when I was at Ben, maybe you were there too when Cormier fought John Jones the first time, and it was like, you're watching this fight, and these guys are walking on. I'm like, this is incredible, man, because you couldn't imagine either one of them losing at this point in time. It was like they were both so good, coming from different weight classes. The partition was up between them. Now they're fighting. That was one of those magical moments, man. Is just when they're making those walkouts. If you imagine that with Ilia Topuria, a guy coming up, the one who's going to introduce doubt into Islam's reign, right? And it doesn't happen, and it's like it just sucks. And maybe I'm one of these guys. I think part of this is Charles Oliveira, and I mean he's a great fighter. Dude's 35 years old. He's fought everybody. He was a champion, but he's not gonna. It's weird at this point in his career, right? Because if Ilia beats him, and I think a lot of us think he will, you're just going to like we're always concerned like what are people going to say afterwards? Well, they're just going to say that Charles is on the decline.
Gonna say, of course.
Of course. So you're like,
yeah.
What are you getting? What are you getting out of this? Where you get true, like greatness or information on where they really stand would have been the fight that we were trying to get. I do think that the other fight is very intriguing, and I will fully come around to that. With Della Maddalena and Islam because they, but I think that fight could have waited. Is all I know. That Ariel has been on about this quite a bit too. I just feel like it's an opportunity missed, man. That's all. And I don't know if they'll ever get that back. That's the problem. If one of the guys slips at this point or even looks human, you know how this works, man. It slips off of that, whatever that must-see aspect is, and it becomes a big fight, but maybe not the same thing.
Yeah, that's the same thing I thought, is that you had an opportunity to make something that felt really huge and special because you had a guy who was looking like already we were ready to anoint him as the best featherweight maybe that we had seen since Jose Aldo, maybe on his way to being one of the best ever. And he announces, hey, I'm leaving the division and I'm going to go up and challenge myself against a guy many people think is the pound for pound best fighter in the world and definitely the best lightweight in the world. A fight that I think a lot of us would have said Ilia Topuria is going to lose, which was something he had gotten to a point at featherweight where he couldn't find any of those fights anymore. If anybody had been matched up with, whether it was rematches against Holloway or Volkanovski or Diego Lopez, he would have been a huge favorite in all of those fights. Going up and fighting Makhachev was one where I think a lot of people would have been like, you're about to bite off more than you can chew. But, you got to respect the ambition, the willingness to go do it, to at the height of his powers to say, you know what, I'm leaving one belt behind to go into an entirely new division and face the toughest guy there. And to miss out on that opportunity when it was right there, because it's like, if you want to see Islam Makhachev go to welterweight, you can always do that later. You can always do that after he fights Ilia Topuria, whether he wins or loses, honestly. You could have him go up to welterweight. And now what's going to happen is that Islam is going to go to welterweight, just as Ilia is coming to lightweight. So at lightweight, you got a fight that you're going to call it a championship fight, but it doesn't really feel like it because there's no existing champion in it. And then you're going to have Islam go up to fight a brand new champion who is still kind of being introduced to a lot of the mainstream fans. They still aren't going to be totally sure what to make of Jack Della Maddalena, especially because I don't know how many people actually tuned in and watched JDM beat Bilal, because you heard a lot of people be dissatisfied with the quality of that pay-per-view overall. And so Islam going up to fight JDM, if he wins and becomes welterweight champion, you already know what people are going to say. They're going to be like, he kind of did a Randy Couture. He waited until there was a champion who seemed more vulnerable than some of the past champions. Then he went up there. He picked his spot. He fought. He got the title. Big deal. You're still going to want, especially if Ilia Topuria comes out of that, beats Charles Oliveira, which when I saw he's a 4-1 favorite over Charles Oliveira, I was like, hold up. Chucky Olives is still Chucky Olives, you
Holy
guys.
shit, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And if Ilia wins that fight, becomes lightweight champion, if Islam beats JDM, becomes welterweight champion, we're just going to be in the same situation again, being like, make them fight.
No, dude, you nailed a lot of good points there. The one thing that it's really, this is an Ilia perspective. The people want to take Islam's perspective. I'm like, okay, you can start to make sense of it, and your acceptance is going to be easy. This was an Ilia move, and I think that because there's a boldness. It wasn't like he was coming up because like, hey, I can cherry pick that title because I know I can beat that guy. It was the boldness to come up and say, I'm going to challenge the dude who thinks he's invincible. That's what sucks, because you have a guy who was going to come up and present this. It is not GSP going to to fight Bisping. This was BJ Penn going up at UFC 94 to fight GSP. And if you remember, that fight was like one of those things you're like, dude, this, because they had history too. They'd already fought. That was just one of those things you're like, this is a crazy like there was so much admiration for BJ Penn at that moment, just to be like, I'm going to go do this, man. I'm going to, and I felt like that's where it was at. So if you're looking at the context of this, it's from the Ilia perspective. And I think that shouldn't, like, people should remember that he went up to do this. That's what his aim was to do. It just didn't shake out. That's the big disappointment.
Yeah, I think, go ahead.
So it's just like, the idea that this can happen again, but they'll never be in this situation again. Like that's what people don't understand. Like whatever happens beyond this point, we will never be in this situation again. Like even if Islam goes up and he beats Jack Della Maddalena, he's moving back down. People are like, oh, he's a welterweight now. He's a he's going to be destroyed by this weight cut. Like it's a perfect moment. It's an open goal, and it doesn't happen. And I think that's worrying. Like, but the reason we got into MMA is because they made these fights. Like you're talking about BJ Penn and GSP. I know Ariel worked on that countdown show. When they were in Hawaii and stuff. And
running the rock when he was out there running the rock.
It's a great,
the rocks in the
time.
ocean and all this. It's crazy. Like this is the shit that built the sport. Like this is what it's fucking about, man. And it just goes, and everyone's like, well, Islam, JDM. And I love JDM. I thought his interview with Ariel was great. I love his character. He is anti-show pony. He is the opposite of what has come to be the norm in MMA, where it's like, look at me. He couldn't give a fuck if you're looking or not. I'm just going to do JDM. I love that shit. But it was right there, dude. And I cut you off, Ben, so please pick up wherever I've left off. But I can't get over how quickly we're moving on from this.
Yeah, especially for me, because when they're kind of going back and forth at each other, they're tweeting at each other, or somebody is tweeting on Islam Makhachev's account.
What are you suggesting?
Yeah, what is this?
What the hell is that, Ben?
There are some tweets issuing from account purporting to belong to Islam Makhachev. And he and Ilia are kind of going back and forth at each other. And I think if you're a regular fan, you're watching this, you're seeing these guys both, kind of talk shit to each other, and you're going, these guys should fight. Why don't they fight? Like, they seem to have an issue with each other. They should fight each other. Like, that's what this whole sport is built around. So why don't they just do that? And I also think it's not a great look for Islam, because Ilia is the guy coming up after you, and you're being like, you don't deserve it. I'm going to go up. I'm going to go up a weight class and do the thing that I am saying you don't deserve to do in my weight class. And especially the way he phrased it there in that tweet, where he's just like, the difference between you and me. And it's like, all right, I'll tell you one difference between you guys. Ilia actually has a win at lightweight in the UFC. Early in his UFC career, he fought at lightweight and won.
Yeah.
Islam does not have that at welterweight. So if anything, he has more of a claim to be able to go up to that weight class, because he actually fought there in the UFC already. And so especially I saw Ilia's comments, I think, to like Eurosport or something, where he's like, I have never seen such hypocrisy. I was like, you know what? He kind of has a point. One of Islam's responses where he was just like, you're just a guy with a cool haircut. And I was like, is that a burn or not? Because I mean, if you're Ilia, you're probably like, oh, I mean, I guess I'm glad you recognize the cool haircut. But it just makes it seem that like the guy standing in the way of this fight happening, the guy avoiding this fight, or in order to do something else, is Islam. So that and for what? Because I feel like if you tell me Islam is doing it because he wants the credit of being a 2-division champion, he feels like people weren't giving him enough credit for beating Alexander Volkanovski because he was coming up from featherweight. And you know what? I'd say some of that is probably true, because once he did beat him, and then the second time he beat him on very short notice. So there were things you could say if you wanted to take credit away from him. And if he says, I want the credit, I don't want to fight another featherweight, I'm going to be the guy who goes up this time and get that attaboy. But first of all, you're not going to give you the full credit, because you're fighting the guy who's the brand new champ, who hasn't really established himself as a champ in people's minds just yet. And also, instead of chasing credit from a fan base that is known for its ability to withhold and dole it out kind of just like on a whim, why not chase money? Because money is real.
True.
And like, this is prize fighting. You're not going to convince me that you're selling more pay-per-views with Islam versus JDM than you would with Islam versus Ilia. There's just no way. That is the bigger fight. It does way more in terms of viewership. And if you're the champ getting points on the pay-per-view, it's a much bigger fight. I don't understand walking away from that. Because like you said, PT, I think a lot of times people think, we can do it later.
Yeah.
Look at the history of this sport. There's plenty of those fights where we were like, don't worry, we're going to build to this one. We're not going to have Mirko Cro Cop come in and fight Randy Couture right away. We're going to build to it by having him beat up Gabriel Gonzaga first. Well, look what
And
happened.
they used to go with the mantra too. Like this was Dana White when he'd do his scrums, like you have to clean out your division. You know, this was always this thing. So like the GSP Andy Silva thing, it was never going to happen because there was always a guy coming up for one of their belts, you know, and it was like, well, he's got to beat that guy before we even discuss this. And it ends up never happening. Same thing with like Cruz and Aldo, right? Other than injuries, it's just you won't get it unless you just leap. And this was actually tailor made to happen. It wasn't like this was something where we're like, all right, let's push both things aside. We're just gonna have the super fight in the middle of it all. The guy had already vacated his title,
Yeah,
and was moving up. It's like it was already there. So that it's gonna sting. I agree with you, man. I don't really love moving on, especially when you're talking about like. I see people now like, well, you know, Aspinall should just fight Cyril Gane at this point. And I'm like, if this happens, I'm like, of course you got to do something at some point, but
yes.
it's so non-complete, right? Like
It's
every time
deflating.
these things happen, you know, it just goes. It's like a detour every single time.
Yeah, Ben wrote about this during the week in the Jones situation. We've seen the videos of him playing with the man's hair and whatnot on the back of a moped, and off he goes. And it's we're nearly. When did this start? November. We were meant to set this all up, and we're still here. And I feel like, you know, Jones he did another video which Ben talks about in his video where he's on the moped this time, and he's kind of, you know, nearly surprised. There's people calling me a duck in the chat. Like, what? What the
It
fuck is
doesn't
going
work.
on here?
That's not how it works, man.
It's
That's
not how
the
it
game
exactly
works,
how it
guys.
works. It's exactly how it
Go ahead,
works.
Ben.
If you're avoiding the fight and you're out here and you're being like, how can I be ducking? I'm having a great time. Very easily. Those things can be reconciled very easily. Ducking doesn't just have to be that you're sitting around in a room avoiding the fight just because you're off having a good time in time. And here's the thing. It's like, if this is what John Jones wants to do, is out there, live his best life, riding around on a motorcycle while talking to people on Instagram Live, which is just given John Jones's history with motor vehicles, don't introduce driver distractions into it because it's a bad idea. But if that's what he wants to do, live his best life, do all that stuff, not concerned with Tom Aspinall, doesn't feel the need to fight Tom Aspinall, that's totally fine. But give up the belt then.
Right.
Why are you walking around out here with the belt? Also, that post that he made a few weeks ago where he showed his wall of victory in his home on his Instagram.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys saw that, where he had guys from like Albuquerque Fine Arts come to his house, put up this wall of victory with the fight posters of every single UFC event he'd fought at. And there was one last space on the wall. And he's like, I haven't had the Stipe fight framed and mounted yet. And then I'm going to put that one in that last space. Like, don't worry, there's one last space. And I'm like looking at the wall and I'm, man, I don't see any more spaces, man. It doesn't seem like this guy intends to do this Tom Aspinall fight at all. It doesn't seem like he's putting it off to like a later date or like he's using it as a negotiating strategy. Once that Stipe poster goes on that wall of victory, it's done. There's no more space on the wall. It's very like laid out, very symmetrical right now.
It is it's like very symmetrical.
Yeah, it looks great. Like it's the guys at Javier and Lyric from Albuquerque Fine Arts who came down there and put those posters up. They did a great job.
He does good work.
But
it reminds me of Lance Armstrong's. Did you ever see Lance Armstrong when he was the case was going on? He had sat down on that chair with all the Tour de France's behind him. That's what it hit me.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like that guy is locking the trophy case and throwing away the key, like he just doesn't intend to do the fight. And again, if that's what like. I don't buy the thing of like that you have a responsibility necessarily. Like the thing George St. Pierre was saying, where he was like, hey, they're going to come and tell you you owe it to these other guys to pass the torch. You don't owe them anybody anything. It's a selfish sport. Be selfish. I agree with that. But do the thing where if you are not going to do the fight, then tell people you're not going to do the fight. Give up the belt. Get out of the way. Let everybody move on. Because that's the thing. It's like if you don't want to fight Tom Aspinall, fine. Just say it, man. Just say you don't want to do that fight for whatever reason. But don't just like hang around and see how long you can keep possession of the UFC heavyweight title before they are forced to do something about it.
A long time ago, I used to think that John Jones was doing this stuff on purpose, where he didn't understand like how tone deaf sometimes he could be, or that,
Yeah.
you know, he was just being awkward. And now, like, you see this stuff, and I'm not like, you see him post this and he's like, guys, you know, I'm living my best life. You think I'm ducking anybody? Come on. And you're like, the logic disconnect of what's happening in this, I'm like, I just think it's John Jones. Like, he's been a frustration to a structured fight game, at least a structured UFC, for a long time. You know, like, it's always John just kind of living in his own world. It's just very different. But I'm with you, man. There's just a point in time, and I guess if you followed him long enough, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, you know, let John be, let him be. But they're not people who followed his whole career. Like, if you followed him from the word go back at UFC 87 all the way to here, you would have seen patterns over the course of this that are just so, like, it makes you so frustrated with John Jones every time he's kind of doing this. Now, is he, like, what's going on behind the scenes? That's really the question, because every time Dana goes public, it's like, well, guys, relax. We're working on it. We got this, you know. But that is not the indications that anybody else is getting, unless John is actually playing a masterful game through this whole process. But it's what is it now? 6 months, Pete? It's like, it's something like that. Yeah.
Well,
so
lads, like, you might have seen this earlier in the week. There was an interview put out, and Tom says in the interview, we're going to hit here by the end of the day. What's going to happen here? And people ran with it. I reached out to people within the Aspinall camp, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we recorded that 6 weeks ago." Like, so this is like the third time they've been told, like, end of the day, end of the week, end of the week. Like, do you know, like, we think, right, there is a possibility, at the very least, we have to acknowledge that there is a possibility that Tom Aspinall could be an all-time great heavyweight. That is a possibility. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But there is a possibility that he is an all-time great heavyweight. And right now, he is in a place where he can't do anything. Because if he takes another fight, he's allowing Jones to just continue. It just lets this keep going. The only thing he can do is really take the Jones fight. We've seen what Jones is doing. He's elongating the process. Dana White has said he will make this fight happen, and that's why I think it's different to Ilia and Islam. He never made that promise. Ilia made that promise, and the UFC did not have to back it up, whereas Dana has said on 3 or 4 separate occasions, I have to make this, and he's a very prideful man, and he wants to make that happen. My question is to you, Chuck, when does this become the UFC's blame again? Because right now we're all in the camp, and go and read Ben's column. It's brilliant. It outlines all the issues I think we all have with John Jones. But at some point, this fucking becomes the UFC's issue again. Because what are you going to do? You can't just keep, oh, well, I guess we're waiting for John. John isn't doing shit, man. Like, that is obvious at this point. Well, he is not doing shit.
There's a stubborn nature to Dana White. And I mean, to what extent this still exists, I don't know. I know he's always had this stubborn streak, but when he, generally speaking, when he's like, hey, we're going to get this done, he's digging in a way, you know, like, and you kind of, you know that they're going to actually put forth that effort. Now, at some point, this is where it gets complicated, because if they do not get this done, the egg is on Dana's face, right? That's what's crazy about it. So, like, he has put himself out there. Let's not forget that while Aspinall was having this ridiculous year where he became the guy he is, and so much was going on in the UFC where the marketing could have swung and, like, really put him into a better position, Dana was, you know, going to every post-fight press conference and basically saying, like, John Jones, you guys are crazy. He's the #1 fighter. He's the pound-for-pound best. He's the GOAT, consensus, blah, blah, blah. He was going on about this through everything. It was like it overclouded everything to the point where all the memes are coming out about Dana and John and all this. This has been brewing for a long time. So if they can't get this done, it would be a glaring failure for the UFC. It would be glaring, because this campaign has been ongoing since, you know, as they justified the full year we waited for Miocic and Jones to play out. I mean, it went on and on and on. It's going to be a very bad look if the UFC can't get this done.
Yeah. I also think that because you had 2 mega fights that you could have made this year. Ilia and Islam is one. Jones and Aspinall is the other one. And Jones and Aspinall is the bigger one. That's the biggest fight that you could reasonably make in the UFC right now. And you can't have Aspinall defend the interim title again. It gets too ridiculous to have an interim title that the guy has to keep putting up for grabs as if it's the real heavyweight title. Plus, it's like, you know, the guy's good years, his prime as a fighter, are draining away as he's waiting for this big fight to happen. And especially when you consider that you waited all that time for Jones versus Stipe, which was the fight that Jones insisted on. Like that was him being stubborn, saying like, no, Stipe is the one that I want. That's the guy I'm going to fight. And it was because he wanted to add that name to his resume, even though the name had survived longer than the man as far as just like viability in terms of MMA. Like he basically pulls a 40-something Stipe out of a semi-retirement, having not fought in several years, having not won a fight in like over 4 years, gets him in there. He looks every bit his age when he gets in there, and you beat that guy. John Jones looked great beating him, but at the same time, he seemed to just want the name, even though we could all see the best Stipe years were, behind us. It was
Stipe couldn't get out of Madison Square Garden quick enough. Remember how quick he was like, I'm out of here, man. This sucks. I'm done.
Yeah. And you got the sense that he only just came back just to make the money for this one. And it was very much like John Jones wants it to look a certain way. He wants his career to look a certain way on paper after it's done. But now you're 6 months later. And you're not even seriously talking, it seems, about a Tom Aspinall fight. You're out there in Thailand coaching against Nate Diaz in a Russian reality show. Like, that is not the guy, that doesn't look like a guy who is seriously dialed in and focused on defending his heavyweight title sometime soon. And so it just, if you can't get that fight done, you missed the chance to do Jones versus Ngannou, which would have been the big one. Now you're going to miss a chance to do Jones versus Aspinall. Especially at a time when you look over across the aisle at boxing, and they are making some of those fights. They are making the big fights that fans want to see. And granted, they have an ocean of Saudi oil money to help them, and so that makes it a lot easier. But it's like, things have flipped in the combat sports. It used to be this was the argument that the UFC would make, is we make the fights the fans want to see. Boxing never does.
Right.
Now boxing is making those fights, and the UFC is not quite able to make them. And that's not where you want to be, especially when, as Ariel likes to say, and I agree with him, feels like MMA is in a bit of a recession right now.
And now Dana's bouncing over to boxing too. Like he's saying, hey, it's better over there. We can make the fights we want over there.
Well, I'd say it's very tough. Being Aspinall right now, like, you're a backup fighter. You're not going to fucking fight them. Do you even train that week? Do you train those 6 weeks like you're preparing for a fight? This idea that this guy is so great and he's kind of just like an afterthought to everything. When I think most people consider him the uncrowned champion at heavyweight division, it's a really shit situation to be in. Like, especially after this guy was sidelined with his knee. He talked about his at the darkest moments there, where he's like, maybe I won't fight again. This must feel like some type of weird purgatory where you're just like, oh, well, I actually don't know if I'm going to fight again now. Like, how long is Tom Aspinall going to be 40 someday going, yeah, they said it's going to happen at the end of the day. They're going to come back and get the contract signed. We better move on. It's another one of those things that we will be talking about endlessly.
You're getting worked up, Pizza. You're getting worked up. You better
getting fired up, man. I'm getting fucking fired up. Michael Morales is 17-0, and he might be part of this new elite group at welterweight. He is fighting Gilbert Melendez, who has had one of the most unfortunate runs of any fighter I've ever seen. When you look at who this guy has fought, he has lost his 3 fights. But lads, let me just flesh this out here a bit.
Please.
His last 3 fights. The first one, May 2023, Bilal Muhammad, pretty good fighter. March 2024, Jack Della Maddalena. September 2024, Sean Brady. Now he is getting Michael Morales, who is 17-0. And he spoke to Chuck Mindenhall earlier this week. And in something that you will never hear come out of my mouth, he said, we're remodeling my grandparents' house in Ecuador, where everybody's going to live eventually. My whole family's going to move in there. My grandparents, my mom, my brothers, we're all going to live there. Even my kids are going to live there. So with the money, we've been able to get some significant changes here. Chuck Mindenhall, a man who loves his family too. Michael Morales, is he the next big thing at welterweight?
I'm building a compound out in Waco, Texas, boys. You should come and visit. It's going to be brilliant. I feel like I introduced Morales to a lot of people, including Ben Fowlkes. I sent the piece and he was acting like, who the fuck is Michael Morales?
And I look and he's 17-0, and I was just like, wait a minute. Like, I've heard of it. It sticks in the memory a little bit, but you're just like, how do you get to be the 17-0 as a welterweight in the UFC? And I feel like I wouldn't know him if he walked in this room right now. And then you pointed out, you're like, well, his last 3 fights have been all UFC Apex fights. And I went, there it is.
Yeah, exactly.
That explains it.
And this one's at the Apex.
Yeah,
which makes
main
no
event
sense,
of the
man.
Apex, which is better because it's like if you're gonna get people to watch one Apex fight, it's probably going to be the main event. But this is what you're seeing in action, like what the UFC has done sometimes, where it's like you stick somebody on a bunch of Apex fights, and they could be awesome. They could be just tearing through people. But the Apex fights, you signal to us with those that like they don't really matter that much. They don't matter as much as the pay-per-views or the fight night in front of a live crowd. And we get that message. And so a lot of people like tune out. And then the next thing you know, you have a guy who's on a tear and nobody knows him.
This one's a little bit like, you know, these Apex cards, you're 100% right. They're kind of like if you want to skip a weekend, this is the one, right? Like kind of giving you that reprieve. But this is one of those ones I'm like, you should pay attention to. That's why I wanted to talk to him, is because he's, you know, he belongs in that space. We've watched, you know, Carlos Prochas and Ian Gary. We've seen these guys who are highly visible for whatever reason, but they've been in big spots. But you have this other guy who's sitting, and I'm not sure of the UFC rankings. I think it's just below number 10, but he's fighting Gilbert Burns with a chance to kind of leapfrog in there. And he's been just on a tear, including his last fight against Neil Magny, which, you know, again, this guy's kind of a gatekeeper, but the way he took him out, which he's on the fence. It's at a stalemate. He turns around, boom, hits him with an elbow and just jumps on him and like wails on it. And it's like, whoa, that was out of nowhere. He should be on your radar. And that class being as stacked as it is, you know, just that top 10 being, I think it's historically stacked. I think that you could look at that division where they are right now, all the guys that make up that division, and be like, this has to be one of the best top 10s we've ever seen. You know, where it's just any iteration of this is good. And this guy hasn't even cracked in there yet at 25 years old, undefeated, 17-0, and a ton of charisma too. He doesn't speak English. He speaks Spanish, but like he's not a guy who's worried about the translation. He's going to still be very colorful. The translation is going to come back to you. He's going to be saying something to you. I think he's got a ton of upside, man, and I think this could be a big moment for him. It's just a shame, I think, that if people don't tune in because it's an Apex card, that they'll miss it. But I think that this is a dude to really be watching right now.
Paul Craic is in the co-main event. He is fighting Rodolfo Bellato. He's on a 3-fight skid. He has told Chisanga Malata, our good friend over at the Sun in the UK, that this is the last fight in his contract. So big crossroads moment for Paul Craic, a legend of the Scottish scene. It is on Saturday night, ladies and gentlemen. Ben, you must be buzzing for this Misfits card. I've checked out the old Yahoo Sports thing, and apparently you're doing the live blog. I heard that you can't wait for Darren Stewart v. Darren Till. Is that correct?
To be honest with you, I've kind of gotten myself to a point where I'm more excited to see what this heavyweight survivor tag team match is like, just because I was watching it, checking out their socials. The way they decided who was going to start in the ring with this heavyweight tag team thing is with a game of rock, paper, scissors.
Wow.
So
nice. Tactics.
Right away, you have my attention. I am interested. So yeah, I'm looking, that thing is starting. I think it started here just a few minutes ago. So I'm looking forward to pulling that one up and spending an afternoon watching that and just seeing what the heck happens.
I'd like to. I am looking forward to Freddie First Love. I heard he's on this card.
First of all, it's Freddie Freelove.
Oh, whatever.
Freddie First Love. And he goes by Tempo Arts, which
right. Yes.
is definitely a downgrade. If your real name was Freddie Freelove, don't mess with that. Just go with that as your fight name.
Freddie First Love is a very funny name.
I was so close. I was so close on that one.
Chuck, before we go, Denver Nuggets, man. I mean, you're back, baby. Jokic.
Gonna be tough.
That's all I got. That's all I got.
It's gonna be tough, but hey, they've got a lot of metal. Even if they lose at this point, I mean, forcing a game 7 and the circumstances they're in, it's been a lot of fun. Very nerve wracking, but fun.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I stayed up. As
I know.
do.
You were the first to tweet. He's texting me. It's like I was 11:30 my time, so it's like 4:30 a.m. his time. He's texting me after the Nuggets win. That was
well
great.
done, Chuck.
Yeah.
Someday, Ben, I will embrace hockey in this similar way. As I told you, it's just
all you
got
to do.
Much.
All he wants from you right now is for you to hate the Las Vegas team. I noticed that Ben has a very big disdain. Yeah, they're out,
which makes me feel conflicted because I really do enjoy hating them. The Vegas Golden Knights, they're bad people.
Felons.
Kevin Ioli, a big fan.
Otherwise.
Kevin Ioli is a big fan of the Knights.
He is.
Yeah. They're awful. I'm glad that they're out of the playoffs, but I'm also sad because I really did enjoy hating them. But now I'm all in for the Edmonton Oilers.
Same here. I hate the Dallas Stars. But anyway, that's a different discussion. Take them out. That's all I want.
I just need to move to America. It's meant to be great over there. Can't wait to one day explore. Moving on. We will
wait a few years. Wait a couple of years before you.
Well, listen, crackheads, we love you. Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't. Sorry. I shouldn't take the Lord's name in vain. Super chats, go ahead. Is Ariel paying you enough, Petey? Get a car. Get a new car. That's not really how I operate. He's paying me lots. I just spend it all on fancy shoes.
Nice. Tracksuits.
Yeah, velour tracksuits and shit like that. I'm a firm believer in, like, wait till the car completely fucking dies before you get a new one. My last car was a Ford Focus. I wrote it off on the freeway after going up the mountains to take a picture of a "fuck the Mayweathers" piece of graffiti. I remember I sent it to you, Chuck. Went up to take it. That. I was on the way home. I was going probably about 120 kilometers in my Focus. Next of all, I look in the window and there's my wheel beside me. And I'm like, whoa, this isn't good. The car spins, does a little flippy. It's spinning. And I'm looking at the traffic coming towards me. So I'm spinning around. I'm looking at the traffic coming towards me. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to fucking die. This is shit, you know? And then I just didn't die. Got out of the car and started laughing like the Joker. I remember someone stopping, like, this car's coming. And someone pulls in like, holy shit, are you all right? And I was like, yeah, I don't know how, but I'm absolutely fine. So, waited for a while, got a car. But if Ariel wants to buy me a new car, sure. Yeah. Like, I mean, we're good friends. I love him. Like, if he loved me, I think he'd buy me a car.
Ben, you see how American Petesy really is. He's a product of the Great Depression. Even as an Irishman, it's crazy. He won't buy anything new. Wears everything out. Got canned goods from like the 80s in his cupboard.
I fucking do. That is fucking certainly true. Fucking hell. Jordan, what else we got, baby? In the name of Petesy, the Ben, and Holy Chuck. In the name of
prayers.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. I know prayers. Hail Mary. That's fun. Our Father, another classic of the genre.
Yeah, that's up there. That's a hit.
Anything else? Last time we get DDP at dog odds, he subs Khamzat. Ooh, imagine he fucking subs him. I think that's the least likely, if I'm being completely honest, Ben.
Yeah, and if you believe in that, I bet you can get pretty good odds on DDP via submission over Khamzat. So jump on it right away.
I mean, if he breaks him down the stretch and Chimaev just wants out of there, maybe that's when it happens.
He just taps the strikes or taps the pure exhaustion in
the
fourth round.
I am done.
Fuck this. Just fuck this shit, man. We got anything else there, Jordan, or is that all of them? Oh, Pete.
Whoa.
Petesy. Oh, shit. $50. Brad Freeman. One. Maybe I can buy a new car. Hang on. Petesy. Love you, bro. I could listen to you for an hour. Well, that's all you're getting, buddy. So, I mean, I'm joking. What did he say? I didn't read the rest of it. Let me read the rest of it, Jordan. Why are you trying to take me away from my people? Keep up the great work, fellas. So that was collective for all of you. You don't know how much I rely on these fucking geniuses. I just come in here with a big, fat, shiny face, and I go, hey, Ben, what you think? Hey, Chuck, hey, what do you think about this? And then I read my dreams, and then we all have a fucking lovely day. Look at Ben. He can't wait to watch Misfits. He's going, Petesy, fucking end this, man.
I gotta get over
heavyweights. Right. Well, listen, crackheads.
Jonesy.
We'll be back on Friday. Chuck is going to be away on Friday, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I haven't asked Ben yet, but hopefully he'll be here. We'll get to that during the week. We love you very much, crackheads. Enjoy Misfits as much as Ben will. Enjoy Michael Morales at the electrifying Apex, and we will see you next week. Ariel Helwani show Monday. The Craic will be on Friday as always. We love you very much. Big kisses. Mwah.